Welcome to our video, which will show you how to set up and carry out the GCSE Chemistry required practical on making a salt. In this practical, we'll be making copper sulfate from an acid and an insoluble base. For this experiment, you'll need some copper oxide powder, 1 molar sulfuric acid, a measuring cylinder, a 100 milliliter beaker, a 250 milliliter beaker, a spatula, glass stirring rod and some safety goggles. You also need a Bunsen burner, tripod and gauze, a heat-proof mat, evaporating dish, conical flask and a filter funnel and some filter paper. The first thing your students need to do is measure out 40 centimetres cubed of the acid using the measuring cylinder and pour that into the 100 milliliter beaker. They then use the Bunsen burner to warm it up until it's almost boiling. You don't want it to actually boil because that would concentrate the acid and increase the risk. The acid is now almost boiling, so I'm going to turn off the Bunsen burner, and it's important then to use the bowed tongs to lift the beaker down, that's going to be very hot, and stand it on another heat-proof mat. While the acid is still hot, we add a small amount of the copper oxide powder to the acid and we give it a stir with the glass stirring rod. Within a few minutes, that should turn blue as we make copper sulfate solution. We keep adding a little more copper oxide powder to the solution and giving it a stir, and we keep going until the copper oxide stops reacting. In other words, we've added excess copper oxide and it will start to collect at the bottom of the beaker. At this point, we stop adding any more and we let the whole solution cool down. Make sure that your students know that we added excess copper oxide to ensure all of the acid had fully reacted. So the next stage is to filter out that excess copper oxide using a filter funnel and filter paper. Make sure your students aren't tempted to start prodding at the filter paper with the glass rod. They need to be patient and let it filter through of its own accord. And there we can see some impressive copper sulfate solution that we've just made. Your students then transfer the filtered copper sulfate solution into an evaporating dish. Your students then use the 250 milliliter beaker with water as a water bath, and the evaporating dish is placed on top. And that's then heated by the Bunsen burner to evaporate the water from the solution, but we don't evaporate all of the water. What we do is we keep heating it until crystals start to appear around the edge of the copper sulfate solution. At that point, we would turn it off and let it cool down. Once the crystals start to form around the edge of the evaporating dish, your students would then turn off the Bunsen burner and take the evaporating dish off the water bath and set it to one side for at least 24 hours so the rest of the water can evaporate from the solution. Your students then return to the crystals a day or two later and they take it out with a spatula, place it on a paper towel so they can then pat it dry, and we've now got our pure dry product. Finally, your students are expected to write a word equation and a balanced symbol equation for this reaction. We hope you found our practical advice useful. For expert technical support, please contact the Philip Harris Technical Support Team on techsupport@philipharris.co.uk or visit our blog at philipharris.co.uk/blog.